is about back to basics, an agenda focused on job creation and solving everyday problems for LA's residents. He was elected 4 times by his peers to serve as president of the Los Angeles City Council from 2006 to 2012. From 2001 until taking office as mayor, he served as the council member representing the 13th district. He was raised in the San Fernando Valley and earned his BA and MA from Columbia University. He studied as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and the London School of Economics and taught at Occidental College and USC. A 4th-generation Angelino, he and his wife, Amy Elaine Wakeland, have a young daughter. What's her name? Maya. And he's a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy Reserve and is an avid jazz pianist and photographer. And so sometimes they tease us in the Palisades about how we look in the Palisades, but I got to tell you, like, is it a prerequisite to be mayor that you have to be a beautiful, beautiful man? I'll let you talk now.
Thank you. Wow, turn the mayor red quickly. Good Yantiv to everybody, Shana Tova. And thank you so much, Rabbi Amy. It is such a joy to be with you and with Gilad Israel today and with my dear friends who also, and I appreciate how you framed it, have dedicated their life to a kind of civic pastoralism, to spend our days trying to improve the lot of our city and our country. I'm so honored to be here with 2 close personal friends. I know you hear that a lot in politics when politicians stand up. They actually are personal friends who I've known before we were elected officials. Mike Bonin, who is the council member who I get to serve with every single day, an incredible fighter for justice. And Ted Lieu, who, like me, served in the military. He's a congressman and somebody who started as a local official, which is always the best place to start in politics, and has done just a heroic job in so many places, but also right here at the VA, which I will return to in a second. This is the toughest speaking assignment in, I think, the year, because there's a rule in politics: never give the speech right before lunch, because all people can think about is the food. So this is like that taken to the ultimate level of the year. You've got like your 3rd caffeine headache of the day, your stomach is rumbling, you know, you're pretending to cough so you can take a cough drop off out of your pocket and use that. But let's not think about that right now. I'm also very honored to come before you as the first elected Jewish mayor in the city's history. And I say elected because there actually was a Jewish mayor before me in the 1880s who was the city council president, pretty progressive for back then when you think about it. And when the mayor died, he was, under the city charter, he became the mayor for 2 weeks until they very quickly said, we got to get the Jew out of office, let's have an election, and 2 weeks later he was replaced. So I'm the 2nd Jewish mayor and the first one elected. And very proud of the title that, thank you. And very proud of the title that you re-bestowed on me of kosher burrito. I guess with an Italian last name, being half Mexican, half Jewish, if I couldn't get elected, nobody could. But it is a kind of a typical Angelino that we all have in our families or ourselves, this mix of cultures that is Los Angeles, the face of the world on the streets of the city in what is now the most diverse collection of human beings in human history in one city. You know, it's an interesting paradox of the high holidays, and some people have said it might have reversed over time, that of course we celebrate the new year and taste its sweetness before a week later we return to this, the holiest day, to atone for our sins, instead of atoning first and then getting to the new year. I've always thought that that is because in some ways it is the ultimate way to lead with our optimism, to taste the sweetness before we go back and do the hard work. We as Jews, and given our history, we aren't known for our optimism, but it is important for us to remember the strength of our optimism that is in that tradition. And for all of us to be able to take one final look backwards at this moment in those kind of remaining minutes of Yom Kippur, like the last rays of the sun before it sets into the Pacific Ocean, is indeed one of the most powerful moments we have as Jews and as human beings. And as we look back on the years, I was told by a friend this morning when we went for a walk to start the year, he said that his rabbi said there aren't the years, there is only one year. From Rosh Hashanah to the next Rosh Hashanah. That is the only year that there is. And it's a powerful way as we start to lose our mental and our physical capacities on a day like this, from hunger, from reflection, that we come to a spiritual cleansing and a spiritual depth. And we started last night with Kol Nidre, which is one of the most important moments in the year, where we say it's okay to break our vows. And there's been back and forth between the rabbis and the traditions over the years. Why would we have that? Some romantically thought it was because the conversos, those who were forced sometimes violently to convert to Christianity or to Islam, would be able to then say, I need to break that vow because I'm Jewish. But we see that it actually started much before the conversions of the Inquisition and before. In the Kabbalistic tradition, it's a more romantic that actually brings back some of what we just heard in the Haftorah about Jonah, which is that if we can show that we can break our vows, then maybe God, who has promised to and made a vow to destroy us, will find himself able in that human way to break his own vow, and we will live. And when you look at what the Haftorah just was about, it was in some ways that God, who has promised to destroy a city, decides not to. I come today to challenge you in the time I've been given to inspire and to touch you and to be touched by the congregation, to try to navigate this strange place that we call Yom Kippur, that strange paradox of being able to once make vows and break vows that we each year kind of scratch our heads and wonder about. Because if we kind of look at that old classic definition of insanity, doing things the same way over and over again and expecting something different, why do we keep making these vows and breaking these vows? To ourselves, to our family and friends, to our communities. And I want to bring the perspective of a mayor, which I think both of my fellow public officials can appreciate, the vows that we make, which are sometimes to a city or a nation. One, I want to say that I hope that in this coming year, you continue to be fearless and continue to make those vows. Why? Let me take one example. Driving here, and as you leave here, you'll see the same thing under the bridges and on our sidewalks. We see so many of our fellow Angelenos who live without a home. Some of them, most graphically, are on our streets, sometimes in tents, sometimes not. Sometimes in cars. It's the family that lives in a storage unit, the veteran who's come home and is couch surfing. We have a homeless population, which we estimate, because that's all we can really do in Los Angeles County, of about 45,000 souls, the largest population in the country. Most visibly concentrated in many of our neighborhoods, but if you go downtown, about 4,000 people living in about 10 or 15 square blocks. A year and a half ago, made a vow that I was asked to make by the First Lady of this nation, Michelle Obama, to try to end homelessness among our veterans, as a first bite at trying to move the homeless situation forward. A lot of my staff said, be careful, because we've got thousands of homeless veterans. It's an almost impossible task. And you've just come into office. Other mayors and cities who have made this pledge have had 3 or 4 years. You have 2 years to do this. And nevertheless, because it's an issue I've cared so deeply about, and I know for both of the men up here on stage with me who serve, since I was 14 years old, serving folks in Skid Row, I took that vow to end veterans' homelessness in 2 years. We knew the model. You can't just throw people into housing without the services that they need. You can't give people services on the street without the housing that they need. You need both of them together, a housing first, supportive services model. And in this past year, with careful coordination and the great heroic work that Congressman Lieu has helped us push our Veterans Administration to do in spaces like this and in general, we've hired the staff. We housed over 4,000, probably north of 5,000 homeless veterans in the last year and a half, starting with 4,000 that we had. Do the math, it should be done, right? We should have no more homeless vets on the street. But in that year, 3,500 new homeless vets coming back from war or falling out of jobs fell onto the streets. So we started with about 4,000, and we probably got 3,000 left, and in the coming 3 months, we probably won't get there. And so headlines said, Garcetti's vow to end homelessness falls short or delayed. We'll probably get there given the pace that we have mid-next year. I'm pretty confident of that. But my point is, if I had not made the vow, if we hadn't stood yesterday where Mike Bonner and I were on the lawn of City Hall, where every single day we walk past homeless Angelenos on the lawn of City Hall where we work, and made a pledge to bring together tens of millions, maybe as much as $100 million a year to try to impact homelessness and take people off the streets, we would not be able to march forward. So if we are careful with our vows, we don't move forward. The first lesson, be fearless. Second, though, is to be humble. For our fearlessness can sometimes lead to arrogance. We see in our fearlessness, we can do anything, we can say anything, we can do anything. I can promise my family, my friends, my city that we'll do huge things. But we are reminded by this exercise each year in the failures and the forgiveness we ask for our failures and those who have failed us, of the humility that we have. That is part of what it is to be human. So as we remain fearless and make our vows, and as we break our vows, let us be reminded of the humility that we aren't the center of things, that we are part of a tapestry, part of a community knitted together. Third, let us take as a lesson from both that we need perhaps the most important lesson, not one that I'm modeling well here today by talking, it's learning how to listen. To hear the voices we don't hear, to see the faces that we don't see, because you can be fearless and humble, but if you're just locked into your own agenda, you don't hear and see the city and the needs all around you. And then finally, those tools which we have of being fearless and humble and becoming good listeners. And let me actually return to listening. I used to be, as was mentioned by Rabbi Amy, a professor before I was elected. I loved being a teacher. I joke that back in the day, I had all the time in the world to think about things and no power to do anything about it as a teacher. Now I have all the power to do things and no time to think about them. I have to figure out a balance between. But when I was a professor, I remember always asking questions, and I always loved the first row. They raise their hand, they make you feel not stupid because they start engaging with you. But about the third or fourth class, I'd ask a question and suddenly a hand in the back would be raised. It was more often than not a female student. And she would say something with such insight and depth that everybody, as they spun around, not even remembering that she was there, that it would change all of their thinking, even the professors thinking about the question that had been asked. And to me, it was the importance of listening instead of talking first, as we see if you flip on Fox or MSNBC, no matter what your flavor is, it's talk, 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 shout at each other, don't listen. She was actually processing and hearing and thinking. So when she spoke with so much more power than the rest of us who were busy talking. But if we're fearless and humble and we learn how to listen, none of those mean anything if we don't imbue it with what the Torah actually teaches us, which is to lead a life with love. In many ways, that's what a vow is. A vow is an expression of love. And the sin that comes from the broken vow is nothing more than a missed opportunity. But with each missed opportunity, we have the opportunity once again to be there. As a quick aside, I'm reminded of a joke that a friend recently told me about the Israeli consul general. Not the current one, he's a good friend, we'll just change the names to protect the innocent. But an Israeli consul general was late to speak at, and I'll change the synagogue, to Wilshire Boulevard Temple. And he gets there a couple minutes late, and he's looking for a place to park, and it's Los Angeles, there's no parking anywhere. So he goes around the block, looking every single block, nothing. Totally parked up. This is a huge speech on the state of Israel and the world. He's getting more and more nervous. He's starting to schwitz. He doesn't know what to do. He goes one more time around the block, still nothing. So he finally pulls over and he looks up and he says, God, I know I've not been a very observant Jew. I've not been in synagogue enough. I know I have disappointed you, but I promise, if you just give me a parking place to get into the temple, I promise you, I make a vow that I will come to Shabbat services, I will come and be a better Jew. And miraculously, right in front of the shul, a car pulls out with the ideal perfect space, right by the stairs. And he pulls into it and he looks up and he said, don't worry, I found a space. So no matter what we do with our vows, whether we stick to them, whether we make them, whether we decide to discard them, let us continue to make vows. Let us continue to be comfortable in the space of breaking our vows, and let us learn from them. So let me conclude. What does all this mean? I'm challenged as your mayor every single day to navigate that space between what I say I will do and what might be possible, to push a city to its limits, to ask all of you, by challenging you to help us with homelessness. And thank you for what you do on the front of hunger with the food drive that you have as part of this. Thank you for the engagement that you make. To look at the things we have to do, like solving traffic by maybe driving a little slower through that street where somebody was hit, or we're always on a hurry and yet we saw 200 people killed on the streets of Los Angeles through traffic accidents. To look at the places and the spaces where we can offer a kid from across town a summer internship by giving them a summer job that in a city that is so prosperous still has pockets of unemployment that are 40 and 50%. Let's continue to try to make those vows, both as leaders and each one of you who I see as leaders too in this city. And in the taste of the year to come, in this process of both weaning and gleaning, find that space and be comfortable in it. Don't reject the awkwardness of this day. Live it, the other 364 days of the year. Navigate that border, that boundary, that space between the holy, which is the vows we make, and the human, which is the vows we break. Between the divine, which is every single day, it is part of our mission to strive for the divine. It's what God asks of us. But we also know that the daily means that we will fall short. Between the word that we make and that we take and the weakness that we express, that's okay. The greatest sin would be not to strive for those vows and to reach for that perfection. We live a life full of doubt and imperfection in a world that is also a mirror of that. We know that it can be arbitrary, that it can be contradictory. But as George Bernard Shaw once wrote, this is the true joy in life, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances. Our mistakes, he wrote, will not bind us nor have power over us. So instead, on this night, let us remind ourselves in our hunger and our confusion and our delirium to live with a measure of doubt, to take this opportunity to consciously assess where we have been and where we are going, what the future might hold, the sweetness of last week and the year ahead. And let us recognize the ripple effect we have in our actions and in our thoughts, and think carefully about what we do and what we say. After all, we need only make one vow and take one step in the direction to change the world. And as we're reminded, it's never, ever too late to ask for forgiveness, even years after we've committed wrong. So as Yom Kippur comes to a close, I wish you all a very happy, healthy, sweet, and safe new year. May we find blessings in being wrong and strength in striving to be right. Gamar, Chatima, Tova. May this be a sweet year for all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our next distinguished guest. You'll forgive me if I don't comment on how good looking he is. Speaks for itself. Like the mayor and council member Bonin up here with us, our next speaker is no stranger to public service. After serving for 10 years in both houses of the state legislature, in 2014, then Senator Ted Lieu was elected to the 33rd Congressional District, which happens to be our district, succeeding our own 40-year incumbent Henry Waxman. His congressional colleagues elected him president of the freshman class of Democrats. He currently serves on the House Budget Committee and the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reforms. He also serves as co-chair of the Democratic Israel Working Group. Last month, Congressman Lieu made his second trip to Israel on an American Israel Education Foundation trip led by Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer. It was the second trip to Israel, the first being with the Jewish Federation Council of Greater Los Angeles in 2007. Congressman Lieu also has served on active duty in the United States Air Force as a member of the Judge Advocate General's Corps and is currently a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force Reserves. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Congressman Lieu personally, and it has been a pleasure, and I've been extremely impressed by who he is and where he stands on issues that are of great concern to us. So please join me in welcoming a great friend of the State of Israel, a great friend of ours, United States Congressman Ted Lieu.
Good afternoon. It is my deep honor to be here. Thank you, President Resnick, for your introduction and your leadership. Thank you, Rachel and Bruce Jeffer, for your friendship. And thank you, Rabbi Amy Bernstein, for being an awesome and beautiful rabbi. So I went to your Shabbat by the Beach services last year, and I thought, what a cool synagogue you have. And just so excited to be here and to be able to represent Pacific Palisades in Congress. When I arrived on floor session the first day in January of this year, it was pretty clear to me that Congress was not as diverse as California. And I thought, oh, I'm adding some diversity here. You know, I'm an immigrant, I'm a veteran, I happen to be Asian American. However, I'm not Jewish. To which I respond, nobody's perfect. But it is really an honor to represent many of you, represent the West LA VA and this entire district. And let me say a few words about Mayor Garcetti and Mike Bonin. Had they not made homelessness a priority, we would not have gotten the attention that this West LA VA is getting in terms of additional funding for federal vouchers, the HUD-VASH vouchers. We would not have had the VA secretary come here multiple times to work on homelessness issues, and it's because of the vow and the commitments that Mayor Garcetti and Mike Bonin took that we are making progress now to reduce homelessness, and we really should give them a round of applause for what they've done. I've now introduced legislation with Senator Dianne Feinstein. She in the Senate, me in the House, identical legislation to make sure that we make it easier for the Veterans Administration to be able to build additional housing for homeless veterans, and also to help make this campus what it can be. In the middle of October, there's going to be a master plan for this campus. We have had multiple stakeholder meetings. There'll be additional meetings. Feel free to contact me or my office, and my staff members are here, Lisa and David. Feel free to talk to them. And however we can help make this better, please let me know. We're happy to work on that. And I've been asked to talk here about my trip to Israel. And I had the honor of going in August. And every 2 years, the freshman members of Congress are invited to go to Israel. And it was a wonderful trip. And there are 3 takeaways that I have from this trip that I'll share with you. First is something I'll call the promise of Jerusalem. Second is their entrepreneurial spirit. And then third is the security of Israel. And let me start off by going to my first trip in 2007. My wife and I went, and we had no idea what to expect. All we saw were images on TV, and we were a little bit scared. We didn't know what would happen. So when we land, there is this huge demonstration at the airport. And we're thinking, oh, it's some national security thing going on. And as we get closer, we realize it's a teacher's strike. And we think, oh, the world is the same, everywhere. And then we went to Jerusalem, both in our first trip and this trip. And it's always amazing to see the wall and then to see the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I happen to be Catholic. It is extremely important to me and to my family. And then you can see at a distance the Dome of the Rock. And you understand instantaneously that you've got 3 major religions with some of the holiest sites to each of them in a very small area, all within walking distance. And you can understand why there's been millennia of conflict. But you also see people living there peacefully. And to me, that is the promise of Jerusalem, that we are able to have different religions and different peoples live in the same place. And it is my hope that we will eventually have a two-state solution. Anything you have your ideas, please let me know how we can best get to that position. On this trip, we had this amazing opportunity to see a lot of entrepreneurs in not just Jerusalem, but also in the West Bank. We had this fantastic briefing by these investors and these businessmen. It was a joint Palestinian-Israeli company, and they were investing in startups. And it turns out there is a large need in sort of the internet world for really good computer programmers and computer apps and computer programs in Arabic. And so this company is doing quite well, employing programmers in both the West Bank as well as outside the West Bank. And it was fascinating to see that happen. And hopefully we'll see more cooperation and have more of that happen, because I think that makes everything much better. We also had this amazing briefing by the author who wrote Startup Nation. Some of you may have read that. And as many of you may know, there are more companies listed on a NASDAQ from Israel than any other nation except the United States. And how does this small country, how does it do that? And it was interesting to sort of see the various entrepreneurs they had there that explained what they were doing. By the way, if any of you use Google Maps or use Waze, as you know, that is an Israeli company that did that. And so if you ask the question to the author, sort of what accounts for this, you would think they would say something, or the authors, they would say something like, oh, it's education that makes us better, or something else. But the answer that the author gave was really quite interesting. He said, if you tell me how a society views failure, I'll tell you how innovative they will be. And so in Israel, you have all these people, startups, that will build a company and it'll fail. And then they'll try again, and it might fail again. But maybe by the fourth or fifth time, they have an enormously successful company, and everything is fine. Some other countries, you fail once, and that's it. People don't trust you anymore. And so I think that's something that we can learn from as well in the United States. We do a fairly good job. That's why Mike Bond and I share Silicon Beach. We do have a lot of innovation here, but it is something we can definitely do more of. But you're seeing a huge amount of entrepreneurial spirit in Israel. You have amazing advancements in all sorts of technology that California can learn from and borrow from. Our California governor recently signed a MOU with Israel on water. Israel has amazing desalinization technology. 60% of Israel's water is recycled. That's phenomenal. They're about to reach 80% in a few years. And that is something we in California, facing a drought, can definitely learn from. In this congressional district, we actually have a desalinization plant that the West Basin Municipal District is doing right now, and hopefully that goes well. And just sort of a little aside about this issue, there's generally been two objections to desalinization plants in the past. One is it kills fish, and second, it's very energy intensive. So the desalinization pilot project in this congressional district has largely shown that it stopped killing fish. They have this amazing video you can watch where you have the water intake and the fish are swimming all around. It is still somewhat energy intensive, but with every passing year, that starts dropping, and at some point I think it will make a lot of sense to do desal plants the same way that Israel has been able to do that, and look forward to working with Israel to see if we can have increased technology sharing. And then the third issue I want to talk about are my memories and experiences of Israel's security. And when you're there, it's very clear to you that Israel's neighbors are not Mexico and Canada. And I remember going the first time in 2007. They took us to this military outpost near Ashkelon, and we went on the second floor landing of this outpost, and the IDF captain sort of pointed out on the horizon and said, there's Gaza. Israel provides a lot of the power to Gaza, and then they launch rockets over. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. And at some point in the briefing, a younger IDF soldier walks up to the captain, and they have this heated exchange, and the younger soldier leaves. And then 5 minutes later, the briefing ends. And so we're back on the bus, and I asked our guide, and I said, what was that all about? And he said, the younger soldier told the older one, please take these people out of here. They are making us targets. And I remember sort of seeing the metallic balloons in the air and being told that, if you ever hear this siren warning, you've got 30 seconds to go to a shelter because a rocket may land and kill you. And to then see the people there, that they're working, they're shopping, they're taking their kids to school under the threat of rocket attack. And to understand the resiliency of the population there, it was a very transformative experience. So on this trip, we also go down south to Ashkelon, and this time, instead of taking us to a military outpost, they take us to an Iron Dome missile battery. And they explain to us how this Iron Dome missile battery works. It has a 90-some% success rate, which is phenomenal. And it has largely been able to prevent rockets from landing on civilian populations inside Israel. And this Iron Dome battery is something that the U.S. Congress provided a significant amount of funding to. One of its prime contractors is Raytheon in this congressional district, and it was an honor to see what the United States has been able to do to help Israel protect its security. And I remember getting a briefing, it was a classified briefing in Washington, D.C. from the Israeli Missile Defense Organization. What I'm going to tell you is not classified, but they were showing all these slides, and at the very end, they show this slide, and it is a wedding picture. It is a bride and a groom. They are standing sort of on a balcony in their hotel, and they're very happy and they're smiling. It's sort of at night. And in the background, you see a streak of light. And that was an Iron Dome rocket firing to intercept a rocket that Hamas had launched. And this couple didn't care. They had their wedding. It was the time of their lives. And what the Israeli defense officials said is, this system has allowed us to live our lives as normally as we possibly can. And it really was an honor to be able to see that happen. We're now working with, the United States is working with Israel to enhance anti-missile systems for other kinds of rockets that could be launched from other countries. And it's very clear to me that the United States needs to do whatever we can to protect Israel and her security. So let me sort of conclude a little bit now on things that you can do that, as Mayor Garcetti said, in terms of vows you take and how you might be able to execute those and affect some change. So if you all see an issue that really you think needs fixing, if it's easy, contact me. If it's hard, contact the mayor. Or Mike Bonin. But in all seriousness, I have an open office. I like to hear your comments and your views. I am on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I used to be on MySpace, but it started to scare me, so I stopped that account. But I like to hear from my constituents, and some of my best legislative ideas come just from talking to constituents and from meetings. In addition, you may want to write a letter to the editor. You might think it's hard to get a letter to the editor in the newspaper, and maybe the first time you try, you won't get it in. But it turns out that even though newspapers get a lot of letters to the editor, that a lot of those letters are written by the same people. So if you start writing and they see some new names, you might see your letter in print, and that can start affecting change. And anything that you can do that provides more information to me, to Mike Bonin, to Mayor Garcetti is extremely helpful to us. And just an honor that you invited me here. I just want to give this passing thought. So I try to go to Catholic Mass, and so on Sunday, I didn't go. I overslept, I was tired, and I thought, but I'm speaking at a synagogue. Maybe that makes up for it. So thank you for making me feel less guilty.
The mayor's going back to his shul. Again, and amazing times in which we live, that this can be our experience on Yom Kippur. We come to our time of remembrance. We come to our time of Yizkor. As a people, we take very seriously the obligation, Lizkor, to remember, because we understand that only by remembering can we make real decisions about what and how to change. Looking backward, we are grateful. We acknowledge all the generations who've contributed to all that we have and all that we are. We link ourselves to the past, which roots us and anchors us. As we come to this time of Yizkor, and we will light the Yizkor candle. In our Machzorim, we turn to page 1008. We read together on page 1008. We turn our thoughts to yesterday, to a world that lives only in our memory. As we recall the days gone by, we know the past is irretrievable. Yet through the gift of memory, we recapture treasured moments and images. We are thankful for the happiness we knew with those no longer here, with whom we lived and laughed and loved. We praise the eternal wellspring of life who links yesterday to tomorrow. We affirm that despite all the tragedy bound up with living, it is still good to be alive. We understand that there can be no love without loss, no joy without sorrow. May we have the courage to accept the all of life, the love and the loss, the joy and the sorrow, as we remember them. Shiviti.
Shiviti Adonai negdi tamid ki mimini ba lemot achein samach libi vayager kevodi af besari yishkon laveta לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת תודיעני אורך ימים אורך חיים סובה שמחות את פניך נעימות בימין לנצח שיביתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד כי מימיני
On page 1022, the words of Linda Paston. Move to the front of the line, a voice says, and suddenly there is nobody left standing between you and the world to take the first blows on their shoulders. This is the place in books where part 1 ends and part 2 begins, and there is no part 3. The slate is wiped not clean, but like a canvas, painted over in white, so that a whole new landscape must be started, bits of the old still showing underneath. Those colors sadness lends to a certain hour of evening. Now the line of light at the horizon is the hinge between earth and heaven, only visible a few moments as the sun drops its rusted padlock into place. Enosh.
Enosh kechatzir yama Enosh kechatzir yama Ketzitz hasadeh kein yatzitz Ketzitz hasadeh kein yatzitz
We wither and we fade.
Kiruach Avrabo ve'eineinu Velo yakirenu od minkomo V'chesed Adonai me'olam Ve'ad olam al yereah Ve'tzidkato livnei vani
We rely on God's loving kindness and steadfast presence.
Enosh kechatzir yama Enosh kechatzir yama Ketzitz hasadeh kein yatzitz Ketzitz